And welcome again to the Dave LewAllen podcast. We cover sports stories, newsmakers, and difference makers in our communities and across the state of Michigan. My guest today, Jack Krasula, businessman, entrepreneur, collector, has evangelization in his life as well through a number of activities, which we will discuss today. He's also my friend, and I'm pleased to have Jack Krasula with us today on the Dave LewAllen podcast. Welcome.
It's an honor to be here. You're at a different level, Mr. LewAllen, at a different level.
Well, right off the bat, we're going to talk about the fact that Jack Krasula, for 20 years on WJR, has hosted a program, Anything is Possible, a 1-hour program, 20 years now, celebrating that anniversary. It was my honor to ask you the questions on your 20th anniversary show instead of you asking the questions. And it was an honor to be in a position to do that.
They were 20 of the best questions in the history of the 20 years of the show. And this is a voice, this is a face for TV. This is a face for radio. Okay. That's a Johnny Giannopoulos line.
Well, let's talk about your 20 years doing that show and where it came from. You're a businessman, entrepreneur. You weren't a radio DJ or someone that even appeared on the radio. So how did this happen 20 years ago?
I wasn't even a wannabe. Great friends with the late, great Mike Feasy, who was the president of JR. And we were golfing 20 years ago. And I said, Mike, you need something positive on JR. You have Rush Limbaugh, that's what my dad used to call him, Sean Hannity, Dr. Laura, all this screaming. I said, you need something positive, inspiration. And he said, Jackie, like what? I said, well, you should have one show a week where you highlight one person and let them tell their story to inspire people. I never said I should be the host. I'd never been on the radio, let alone JR. And I said, I'll send you some names. So I wrote down Ernie Banks, my hero, Father Hesburgh of Notre Dame, Senator John McCain. I didn't know these people. Eleanor Jositis, Dave Bing. I didn't know these people I admired. And I put them on a piece of paper, sent it to him. And he called me and he says, I love the idea. And I think you'd be great as the host. And about 1,050 shows later, I've always said I'm not the host. I'm the beneficiary.
And a facilitator to some great conversations. And we can run down the list of some of the names. I mean, you mentioned them, those people, those names that you mentioned. They were all on your show, weren't they?
Yes, they were. Yes, they were. But you get talkative people. Mike Tirico, Dick Vitale, Lou Holtz, Bill Bonds. Yeah. You don't have to ask these people. You don't have to ask them one question. Just give them the microphone and be like George Burns with the Gracie Allen. Remember, he just sat back, smoked the cigar, and Gracie did all the talking.
So inspirational messages, inspirational conversations. Why is that important in our world? Why was it important 20 years ago? Why is it important today?
You can live without food for a week. You could live without water for 2 weeks. You can't live a day without hope. And we need hope today. Yeah. Hope keeps us alive. And with this, the divisiveness amongst families and friends and husbands and wife and all of this, the social media craziness, we need to hear good stories. And we've had 3 Miss Americas, 10 astronauts, 50 Hall of Famers, governors, senators, cardinals, TV personalities, Hall of Fame TV personalities. You're like Dick Clark. We've watched him for 30 plus years. He looks better now than he did 30 years ago. It's unbelievable.
You're very kind. And it was an honor to be on your show. Among all those great guests that you've had over the years. And it's interesting the way you go about Anything is Possible in that we really learn about the guests that you have on your show, about their background, I guess the people in their lives that help them become who they are or who they were.
Hmm. People say, Jack, what's the one common theme amongst the 1,050? Hmm. Some have a great faith, some don't. But I think every one of them had a great mom. Many never met their dad, or the dad was a bum, or the dad was great. They've had setbacks, etc., but they had a mom that believed in them. And that's been one common trait.
So 1,050 shows. And again, some of the guests, because you started 20 years ago, some are deceased.
Yes.
But the conversations really are timeless in that, there are important things that anyone can pull out of those conversations to benefit their own lives. And it's not like these shows are one and done. I mean, these are recorded, they're available.
Yes.
I mean, people can go back and listen to some of these great guests, the astronauts of the Miss Americas, the cardinals of the Catholic Church, so on and so forth. They're available.
Success is a journey, not a destination. That's how all the guests believe. It's the journey in life that's the real joy, whatever it is. You win an Oscar, but then you got to win the next Oscar. You win U.S. Open, but you got to go out there the next week. That there is a God, there's a master plan. God is always working in your life. Kenny G is a great golfer, and he, was pretty good.
Yeah, he was.
And his break came. He was going to go on the Johnny Carson show, and he was going to play 2 songs. He's in the green room, and the previous guest went long, and they're going to bring him out, and they say, hey, Johnny's only got time for you to play 1 song, and this is the song we want you to play. So Johnny says, play something for us. And Kenny G decides to play Songbird, the other song. Just something told him. And President Bill Clinton was watching Johnny Carson that night from the White House and called him and said, I want you to play at the White House. Wow. Kenny G has been to China over 250 times. What's it, 1.3 billion people. From Monday to Friday, Dave, at 5 p.m., in every bus, train, car, plant, office building, they play the same song, the Chinese government, Monday to Friday, 5 p.m., throughout the country.
Really?
And I forget which song it is, but it's a Kenny G song.
Huh.
Wow.
Yeah. Amazing. Amazing. Well, there are stories like that throughout the 20 years.
Every week.
WJR Radio, Sunday evenings.
Saturday evenings. 10 p.m.
Right.
And now they've been also doing it 7 a.m. on Saturday as well.
And again, they're available past episodes as well.
On anythingispossible.biz, and now we have a YouTube channel, AIP as in Peter, speaker series, and the last year's worth or so is out there on the YouTube channel.
All right, we're going to talk more about some of those other things, but first, a little bit more background. Jack Krasula. Who is Jack Krasula? I know. I want our viewers and listeners to know more. You're a Chicago native, grew up on the South Side, but you're not a Sox fan. You're a White Sox fan, and or a Cubs fan. I want to state that right now. But you got to Detroit. How? That's a fascinating story as well.
From the South Side of Chicago, we now have Pope Leo the 14th.
Yes.
He's phenomenal. But we have to pray for him that he becomes a Cubs fan, right? When I was a kid in the late 50s, the Sox were really good. Nellie Fox, Louis Aparicio, et cetera, and the Cubs were awful. We had a tough century. We had 108 years.
I'll say.
And so Dad would take my brother and I to Comiskey, and you couldn't sit in the yellow, red, green seats, because they were. But then when we would take the L to Wrigley on the north side, there'd be like 1,000 people. And they would escort us to the box seats so that Jack Brickhouse and WJR could see a few people. And they had this man named Ernie Banks. And Mr. LewAllen just gave me the 1968 Topps card of Ernie. And Ernie and my mom taught me positive thinking. They were the Zig Ziglar before I ever heard of Zig Ziglar, etc. Ernie Banks was just Mr. Optimism, and he was fantastic too.
Mm-hmm.
And I fell in love with Ernie Banks. And that's why, and in 69, we had that great run, 84, we should have played the Tigers.
Right.
I don't think we would have beaten the Tigers, but we should have been there. And then, a few years ago was the 108 years. Ernie Banks had just died.
Oh.
Every Major League Baseball has 108 stitches. And I think Ernie went to the Lord and said, Lord, 108 years, 108 stitches. It's time, Lord. Okay. And we won the World Series.
All right. Growing up in Chicago, you got to Detroit. You went to college in Illinois, got your master's or MBA in Illinois, and then wound up in Detroit. How does a Chicago native get to the Motor City?
I was living at home. I was working at Illinois Bell downtown Chicago, programming. I had just gotten a master's from Loyola on Rush Street at night, on Rush Street. I had never been on an airplane. I wanted to go on an airplane. And there was a Texan, Bobby Guy Stevenson, was a recruiter for Cutler Williams, a consultancy, software consultancy. And he called me out of the blue and said, we got opportunity in Detroit. We're going to open office in Chicago in 6 months. We'll move you back. And Dave, I just wanted to go on an airplane. So I came here. They hired me. That's how I got here. 4 years later, I'm doing projects for Cutler Williams. This is how God works. I'm on a project at American Motors on Plymouth Road. And Marty Mutz was the DP director. And I did a good project for him in Kenosha, Wisconsin. And so he gave me a little book. He says, Jack, I just bought this book for you. Tiny little book, like 25 pages. I want you to read it. I want you to do what's in it. I want you to come back and I want to do business with you. And the book was How to Incorporate for $29.95. And that started Decision Consultants. And over 26 years, we built it to 1,800 people writing software. And in 2002, Dave, we sold the business to Cyber out of Denver for a lot of zeros.
Mm-hmm.
And the chairman of the board was Bobby Guy Stevenson, that recruiter who had brought me to only in America.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. And then Mike Feasey says, Jack, I'll give you the radio show.
All right. And we discussed Anything is Possible, the radio show. And I had mentioned evangelization earlier on, while that's positive and 20 years of great shows, you have done more in terms of evangelization through a speaker series, through multiple speaker series, the AIP speaker series. Why all these other projects? What was the motivation there to move from the radio show to do more, I guess, to reach more people?
The first few years of the show was all about success. If you've got 800 employees, how do you get 1,000? If you're the co-host of the nightly news in Detroit, how do you get to Chicago or New York City? Success, achievement. And then the economic tsunami hits. I made some bad choices financially. I co-signed for too many loans. And that show changed Jack to where now It's much more about surrendering to God versus achievement. I've always said I'm not the host of the show, I'm the beneficiary. So I've had Father Ricardo on 5 times. More and more, not all the guests, but it's more about a relationship with Jesus. And that transformed me. And then I'm a storyteller. So my story has changed from how you go from 10 million to 50 million. And now it's more about a relationship with the best friend we all have is the same. His name is Jesus. It's without a doubt. And it's becoming a closer relationship with Jesus. And Mike Feasy and now Mike Wheelers, they've allowed me to highlight that when the guest is so inclined.
And beyond the radio show, the speaker series that you have at
St. John's Resort in Plymouth,
where you bring in speakers that are available for the general public to come and hear and learn from, and if so inclined, strengthen that relationship.
4 years ago, God put on my heart, Jack, you go to Woodside Bible Church, it's on fire. Something every night. Kensington, these feel-good churches. Whereas you go to Catholic church, they're kind of sleepy.
Tradition bound.
Yes. Jack, I want you to bring one of these guests in a month that I've given you for the show. And that's now been 4 years. You and Sandy came recently, and there was this priest from the south side of Chicago, Father Tom McCarthy, who 42 years ago, when he was a seminarian, met Father Bob. They called him Bobby. And they formed a friendship. They're both Augustinian fathers. And recently, he's got to learn, you can't call him Bobby anymore. Now he's got to call him His Holiness Pope Leo XIV. So he talked about the relationship with Father Bob Prevost. It's those kind of people. The month before that was Mitch Albom. Can I tell you a little bit about, okay?
Please.
So Mitch's speech was giving is living. He says, I want to tell you about 3 people. He says, I go to Brandeis University. It's the first day of class. I sign up for 4 classes. I walk into the first class. I count 12 kids. I'd say to myself, there's no way I can skip class if there's only 12 kids. I get up. I'm walking out the door. And here's the professor who says, my name is Professor Maury Schwartz. They call me Coach. I want to start with the roll call, A to Z. I'm at the door. And he says, Mitchell Albom. Okay, I got to turn back. I can't leave. Jump ahead 4 years. I'm graduating. The coach says, Mitch, you're special. Stay in touch. Don't forget me. I get busy for the next 17 years, Mitch says. JR, ESPN Sports Reporter, writing, Free Press, all that. I never call him. I never write him. Nothing. No contact. And one night I'm watching Nightline with Ted Koppel, and he's interviewing this guy paralyzed from the neck down in a hospital bed, and it's Coach Professor Maury Schwartz. No contact for 17 years. I cry. I call the cell the next day. It's the same cell. Professor, my name's Mitch Albom. I don't know if you remember me 21 years ago. I was a student there, and boom, boom, boom. He says, Mitch, why didn't you call me Coach? Come and see me. And that started 17 straight Tuesdays when he went. And he decides, I'm going to write a book after he died so that his wife and family would have a little money. 50 publishers said, this thing will never sell. 50 publishers. The 51st publisher says, well, 5,000 copies. I think it's now sold 40 million copies. But without that Nightline, okay, I mean, how God works. I'm the beneficiary, not the host.
In addition to the AIT.
And after, if the powers to be at Cumulus listen to this show, the 20th anniversary. I ain't the host anymore. Dave LewAllen
Yeah.
is the host of Anything is Possible.
Yeah. Jack Krasula, my guest here on the Dave LewAllen podcast. Honored to have you here. Was honored to be able to ask the questions of you on your reflections on the 20th anniversary show of Anything is Possible. All right, we talked about the speaker series. We talked about evangelization. That's not a topic everyone is comfortable with. Not everyone is a believer. Not everyone, wants to be confronted with faith questions of faith. How do you respond if you encounter someone who maybe isn't on board or doesn't want to get on board with you and or your beliefs?
Well, I don't force it on them.
Mm-hmm.
I talk about my story and how I was a wild stallion. I could do anything, athletically, business-wise, anything. Prove me wrong, okay. So I talk about my journey. I don't really talk about Catholic or Baptist or whatever. It's just a relationship with our best friend. The best friend of all of us is Jesus. The greatest act of love in the history of the world was this.
Yeah.
And he did this for you, Sandy, Pam, and I, right? For every one of you. So that's how I do it. And if the body language is not so good, then I,
Yeah.
go to another subject.
Gotcha. All right, another subject.
Okay.
Collecting. So you collected baseball cards as a kid like I did. Unfortunately, your mom discarded your cards. Mine did not. So I have my collection as a kid, including the Ernie Banks card, which I was happy to present to you today.
Mr. Cub.
Yeah.
Mr. Cub.
But your collecting began, as you tell it, in school with a school classroom project.
So there was a nun. I think it was the 3rd grade. There were 12 of us. And Sister, as a project, had each of us write to 5 senators or governors for an autograph. Jackie didn't always listen. Pam will tell you, Jackie still don't listen. So instead of senators, I wrote to Ernie Banks, Mickey Mantle, Willie Mays, my heroes. And Dave, they all sent back an autograph. I go to Sister Proud and Happy. They have the ruler. They used to grab you here, You're going to go blind, go see the priest, big red novenas, all that stuff, go to public school. And there was a man, Jack Becker, down the street, a salesman with 12 kids. He was our Little League coach. And he was getting Sports Illustrated and Sport Magazine. He says, Jack, after I read them, I'll give them to you. You rip out the pictures. You send them to these guys. And then a few years later, he says, why don't you try to get an autograph of every Hall of Famer of every sport? And there's always new ones coming in. And there's always new Cy Young winners and Heisman Trophy winners and NBA Finals MVPs. It's always new.
And so you did this.
Well, it's a journey. It's a journey. It got out of control, like other things have gotten out of control.
So how many Hall of Famers in baseball do you have autographs from? And
I think there's 362. I missed 6. Baseball started 1869. A couple years ago, they got to put a guy in, Saul White, who was a catcher in 1869. And then when he retired, like in the 1885 or so, he became an umpire. So, boy, they put the gajibis on you. Boxing. Every year puts a couple guys that were boxing in the 1860s.
Yeah.
Basketball, every couple years puts a coach from Yugoslavia or South America from like the 1940s and 50s.
All right, so you can't send a letter to all of these people. So how do you obtain the autographs, the signatures of some of these individuals? I mean, you talk about a journey. This sounds like hard work.
It's all networking. About mid-'80s, I said, I'm going to try to get a lot of similar people to sign on the same piece of paper. Heavy stock, all-time greats. Like, all of the Cy Young winners in the American League. So we're now into the third sheet where there's 25 on one sheet. So I've got hundreds of those sheets. So I started a sheet a couple of years ago. I wanted to get the managers and the coaches that have won the most championships. Okay? So Nick Saban, college football, Scotty Bowman, Joe Torre won 4 World Series, Gino Ariamo, the Connecticut women. And I still need Coach K for the men's college. So I'm having breakfast with Coach Greg Campy last week. And we go to Original Pancake House on Woodward, and here's Rick and Kathy Wagner having breakfast together.
Ex-GM CEO and chairman.
And they've just moved, okay, to South Carolina. But they're back in town. Jack, come on over. Campy, come on over. And it just hits me. I remember Rick is on the board of Duke University. Yeah. Not only, he played for Duke, and he's on the board of directors of Duke. And I says, Rick, I need a favor. What do you need this time, Jack? Okay. Well, I got this sheet, but I need Coach K on, and it's really valuable. You ever see him? Well, Jack, he's on the board with me. Okay. Well, I said, if I gave it to you, next time, would you get it signed? Kathy says, Jack, it's done. So you always got to be, right?
The listening. Benefit of networking, too.
Zig Ziglar, the greatest motivational speaker of our lifetime. The first book he ever wrote was See You at the Top. 41 times in that book, he says, you can get everything in life you want if you help enough other people get what they want. And that's true today. Do you get the short end of the stick? Yes. But all in all, it's a great way to live.
Amazing. So this collection, how do you house it? How can you possibly house it? And now you have a partner in the home with you, Pam, who probably doesn't want all this stuff in the home. What do you do with it?
Pam views that another partner I had was the collection. Okay? There's 300 binders, 4 or 5 inch binders of stuff. Okay, a lot of stuff.
I mean, it's valuable stuff too. I mean, this is.
I have a handwritten letter or a typed letter from 45 of the 47 presidents. Handwritten letter from Washington, Adams. You didn't have the internet back then.
Yeah, that's right.
Lincoln. I think we've had 421 astronauts. I miss 11. 5 of them are brand new. Okay, so it's unbelievable. Time Magazine, since 1927, 100 years, has had their Person of the Year. Hitler was once, Stalin twice, etc. 3 popes. I think I miss 11. I have a document signed by the Fuhrer, Adolf Hitler. So when Pam moved in, all but 11 of those binders didn't make the cut. Okay? So they're now at the office. Kelly's been with me 33 years. She's unbelievable. Every week she says, Jackie, we ain't got no more room, Jackie.
So what kind of value is there for, a one-of-a-kind collection? I mean, nobody has all of the stuff that you have. Nobody.
Well, in 1999, Sports Illustrated wrote an article called The Uncollector about this crazy guy that has tried to do it for every Hall of Fame. Jockeys, swimmers, everything, tennis, golf. And it's priceless. It's priceless. Can't be repeated.
Yeah.
And for a long time, I thought I have to have a museum. I thought, build a museum in Orlando, where people come with families. But Dave, young people don't want to go to museums. They want the museum to come to them on their cell phone, right? Every museum. So now we've just created a draft virtual museum where we took 8 categories and they call them assets, 12 assets of each. And then you write narratives, you do videos, etc. It's all online. So that's the journey to scan this and create this unbelievable virtual museum. Now, I don't have the number of zeros that some of these, the Cubs, et cetera, have. So if there's anybody that would like to help sponsor this virtual museum, reach out to me.
Well, that's where the benefit of your networking
Yes.
will come in
Yes.
again.
Yes. Yes.
But what an incredible thing.
It's the journey.
Yeah.
And then it's the was having lunch with a friend a couple weeks ago. Very influential, and he's got an extremely good friend whose son is Steve Miller on the Trump team.
Yeah.
Okay? Great spokesperson. Steve Miller just got married, and Ernie and Dee went. So he's talking about this and how close he is to Steve's dad. So it hits me. I have a baseball signed by every president since John F. K., but I don't have one signed by Donald Trump. So I say, Ernie, when are you going to see Steve's dad? We're going to be together in New Orleans in a week. I says, I got a baseball in the car. You'd think you could get it to Steve, and maybe Steve could get it to the president. So you're always listening. You're always listening and thinking, what do I need?
Yeah. But as you say, that's part of the journey.
That's the journey.
And that's what makes life.
Yes. Interesting.
Yeah.
It's like you every week you got to get another guest. If you're at the bottom of the barrel this week, but
come on.
Okay.
Jack Krasula is my guest.
Here's the honest.
All right, please.
So we were together, and Dave LewAllen says, Jackie, if you get me this guest and this guest and this guest and this guest, I'll have you on my show. Okay. Beggars can't be choosers.
Yeah. No, this is great. This is great. I think you need to work on your baseball card collection, though, next. We got you started today with Ernie Banks. So you're a big sports fan, too, without question. We mentioned the White Sox and your love of the Cubs. How about our Tigers? What do you think? And and see regularly Kirk Gibson and some of the other guys, that have made an impact in this town. What do you think of
Gibby in Waterford, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So the other day, Gibby says, I says, how do you explain it? How do you explain it? He says, well, they love each other. They're all young. We got phenomenally lucky with Scooble because he was a 9th round pick.
Yeah.
But Jack, the biggest thing is the former regime didn't believe in analytics. And it's all about analytics today. And this new regime with Hinch, general manager, president, they're all about analytics. And they've now become one of the best amongst the 32 teams in analytics. He says, and by the way, the ones that's the worst, furthest behind, doesn't surprise you, is the Colorado Rockies.
Yeah. Yeah. Headed for a historically bad season. But how about the impact of A.J. Hinch, though? I mean, and I don't know where they're going to end up this year, but they're certainly off to a great start. And seemingly will have an opportunity to contend throughout the course of the season. But Hinch is a great manager. I mean, great manager.
A great leader.
Yeah.
Right? A great leader. Chuck Daly was a high school basketball coach, then coached at Penn in college, then he coached the Pistons, and then Orlando, remember, at the end.
Yep.
I says, what's the difference, Chuck, between coaching college and the pros? And this was 30 years ago. He said, in college, you coach 12 nephews with the good, the bad, and the ugly. With the pros, 30 years ago, you're coaching 12 CEOs with their own posse. I got to get my 18 rebounds. You got to get your 22 points, assist. 12 companies. That's the difference.
Yeah. Well, and now, I mean, if Chuck could see where they are today in terms of the money and the salaries. I mean, his nickname was Daddy Rich.
Daddy
I
Rich.
mean, and
Never bought a suit,
yeah,
right?
but boy, he would have loved to have been coaching in this league today.
No.
Well,
So
for
he
the
leaves the
money.
Pistons. He goes to Orlando, Mr. DeVos. And he's negotiating the deal. Him and his wife both got a car down there, up here, a condo down in Orlando, boom, boom, boom. Unbelievable money. But they're ready to sign the contract, and he's going to get like $400 per diem a day when he's on the road. And the lawyers are there and everything, and he says, I want to change one thing. Mr. DeVos says, what's that? I want to make $402 a day per diem. An extra $2. Why? Well, Pat Riley makes $400 a day, and I want more than Pat Riley. Okay, so they had just drafted this kid, Penny Hardaway, the new superstar, Penny. So it's the first couple, preseason games, and Penny's not playing defense. So Daly calls a timeout. Penny, we play defense down here, or we don't play. Penny, okay. Starts up again. A few minutes later, Penny ain't playing defense. Calls timeout. Penny, sit the rest of the game. Think about playing defense. So Daly goes to the condo. It's midnight, and Mr. DeVos calls Daly. Bill Davidson never did this, with the Pistons. And he says, I understand there was a little run-in tonight with Penny. What do you mean? Well, there was a disagreement. No, he didn't play defense. I warned him, play defense. Went back out, didn't play defense, so I sit him. That's what we do. Well, could you reach out to him? He's our future. What do you mean reach out to him? He didn't play defense. Okay. Well, could you just do this for me? So the next morning he calls Penny, and some kid answers. Is Penny there? Well, who are you? I'm Coach Daly. Well, Coach, what do you want? I want to talk to Penny. What do you want to tell him? I says, I want to talk to Penny. I'm the coach. Well, the way it works, Coach, is you tell me what you want. I'll go talk to Penny, and then I'll get back to you. Okay, that was 30 years ago. So what's it like today?
Yeah.
So
Amazing.
that didn't last too long.
Yeah. He's got a million of them. Jack Krasula, great storyteller.
And some are true.
Yeah, that's right. Great host. Anything is possible on WJR. On Saturday evenings, you can find the show 20 years and counting going forward. Thank you for this today. This was great. Appreciate you and the time that you've given us today and the stories as well.
We've watched you for 30 plus years. You've never aged. You're like fine wine. It's not only what you do, Dave, but it's the manner, the style with which you've always done it. So thank you for all you've done for all of us.
Well, thank you.
God bless.
I appreciate you. Thank you, Jack. Jack Krasula, my guest today on the Dave LewAllen podcast. As always, thanks to our producer-director, Josh Bowen. Most of all, to you for watching and listening. And until next time, stay safe, be kind.